My name is Ginny McGee, and I'm an instructional designer in the e-learning division at Camden County College. And we are going to be going over using tests and test banks in Canvas today. And today's agenda, we're going to look at briefly just some of the benefits and kind of being honest about drawbacks of the format of the Canvas tool that is used to create quizzes. Then I'm going to go over the quiz settings, and then we're going to talk about the types of questions that you can create in Canvas and how to create the most used ones. Then we're going to look at question groups and why you would want to use them and how to set them up. And then also question banks, which is something that we haven't gotten into a lot in training in the past, just for the sake of time. So we're going to get into that today. And then moderations and testing, so how to set up extra time for students that have accommodations or open an exam up for a student who didn't get to take it during the designated time. And we'll look at grading, and then we'll have time for some Q&A if there's any questions that weren't answered throughout the presentation. So just a quick look at advantages of what makes the quizzes tool in Canvas a good idea to use in your class. And of course, everything being online right now, if you are giving a standard test, this is pretty much, if you're not using some type of alternative assessment, this is what we have to work with, is the Canvas quizzes tool. So the one big thing I think that people really like, of course, is that you can set it up so that your questions are auto-graded, so anything that's multiple choice or matching or true and false, those types of things will be automatically graded. And it's a format so that you can easily grade essay questions, and those types that aren't auto-graded, you can grade them a little more easily. Of course, it's automated, and there is a nice way that you can randomize questions. It makes it easy to customize. You can offer different questions to different students, have it randomly pick from a pool of questions to cut down on answer sharing, cheating, that kind of thing. You can easily share quizzes with your colleagues if you would like to. And another big one is that many publishers have Canvas compatible test banks. So please don't ask if your particular textbook has those. That's something that you would have to ask your rep, but a lot of the publishers already have those ready to go that they can put into the course for you. And then challenges. So we'll be honest here, the quizzes in Canvas can be tedious to create from scratch. If you're starting just, with a blank, just starting creating a quiz, it can take a while. You can't just take a Word document and easily convert it to a Canvas quiz. That does not work. So that's something that is going to involve a lot of copying and pasting and that type of thing. And showing work is a challenge. If you are a math instructor, or I know like fire science and some others, or you may have someone that needs to be able to show their work on an equation or something like that. We'll talk about some ways that people have found for students to show their work, but it can be a challenge because it's not really easy for that to happen the way that Canvas quizzes is set up now. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of my PowerPoint here for just a minute, and we're going to go ahead and click in Canvas. And I do want to show everyone, I always have to give a little plug to the Canvas Faculty Hub. So if I think everybody that's in here right now is a member of the Canvas Faculty Hub or has been invited to join. But if you don't have a membership to this or you're not sure, you can always email the e-learning division email. I'll share that contact information with you at the end. And we will be happy to add you to the Canvas Faculty Hub. But I do want to show you here a couple of things. First, if you click on the resources button, if you're looking later for some additional help with setting up quizzes. If you scroll down and look under assessment tools, there's 2 videos that I created that cover most of the stuff that we're going to go over today, maybe a little less depth, but the basic things that you'll need to do in quizzes can be found there. And then I also want to point out that we will be posting our recorded webinars. So this webinar and the others that Rose and Pat did earlier in the week will be posted here so that you can watch them if you need a refresher. And then finally, this upcoming trainings and Canvas help link is where you can find a list of all of the webinars that are coming up. So you can find the complete list and links for all of them. All right, so let's go ahead and, oops, let me get out of student view. Let's go ahead and take a look at setting up a quiz. And I'm going to go ahead and click on my example class here. And I'm going to click on the quizzes tab. You'll notice that we recommend having the quizzes tab hidden from students. We want the students to access quizzes through the modules. And there's a video on how to set that up in the Canvas Faculty Hub as well. So when I click on my quizzes tab, in order to create a new quiz, you're going to click this Add Quiz button. And I'm actually just going to use this example quiz here because I have not set up any of the settings for it, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do right now. When you click on the name of a quiz, you will see a couple of options up here. So this quiz is not published, just like anything else in Canvas. Before students are going to be able to see or take the quiz, you're going to have to publish it. You can always use this preview button. If you would like to see what the students are going to see, you can take it as a student. You'll even get a grade at the end. This is a nice way to make sure that everything looks the way it's supposed to look and to get an idea of what the students are going to see. And what I need right now is this edit button, since I'm coming back in here and I'm going to go ahead and put my settings in. So of course you're going to need to name your quiz. And most of the time it's going to be a chapter name or the topic or something. Here is, of course, where you're going to put quiz instructions. And it's a nice place to give students maybe an overview of what is going to be on the quiz, not too in depth, but maybe just how many questions, the topics, the chapters, whatever it is, any last minute directions. You also could, of course, use the rich content editor tools to put anything else in the directions that you want, a video with last minute advice or a pep talk or something. And then down here is where you will set up your settings for your quiz. So we're focusing on graded quizzes today. This is our focus, but just know that you could do a practice quiz. There will not be any points associated with the practice quiz, but your students and you can see feedback. So students will get to see how they did on the practice quiz, and you can also look and see how your students did as well. And then you can also use quizzes for surveys. But we're going to stick with graded quiz today. If you have assignment groups set up, you can select your assignment group. This course does not have assignment groups, so I'm just going to leave it in assignments. And then you've got your options here. So this box is going to shuffle your answer choices, and that is not shuffling your questions themselves, just the answer choices. So you can do that, but if you've got true and false and all of the above, none of the above, those types, I would not shuffle because it will shuffle those. You can set a time limit for your quiz, of course, and I will show you a little later how you can give students who have accommodations extra time on a quiz, but just know that whatever your time is that you give students, when that time is up, it will submit automatically, and anything that the students have not finished is going to be marked wrong. You can choose to allow multiple attempts, and you can choose what score you want to keep. So you could keep the highest score, the most recent or latest score, or the average score, and that's up to you. And then this is where you would put how many attempts you want to give the students on that quiz. This here causes some confusion. So this is what you want to allow the students to see after they have turned in the quiz. So you could decide that as soon as they hit that submit button, they are going to see their score on any portion of the quiz that is auto graded, and that is by default. You can't control that. But what you can control is whether to allow students to see what they got wrong, and that is by checking this box. And then also to let students see the correct answer. So at this point, they basically would see almost an answer key. So they could see what they got right, what they got wrong, and any they got wrong, they would see the correct answers marked. What's a good idea, I think, is to, if you are going to show the correct answers, is to have a date that you will allow those answers to be seen. And it would generally be a date after you know everyone is going to have taken the test. And then you can hide those answers again so that students can't keep accessing them after a certain point. Down here, you can choose to show one question at a time. If you don't check this box, by default, all of the questions will be on one screen. Students will just need to scroll up and down to get to the next question. But if you check this box, they will have one question on each screen and they'll click a next button. If you choose to lock the questions after the students have answered, this is going to prevent them. So if they're on question 5 and they suddenly realize, oh, now I know what they meant in question 2, it's going to be locked. They're not going to be able to go back. So this is an option. I would probably use this sparingly, and I would definitely advise students very clearly ahead of time to let them know that this is how the quiz is set up so that they're aware of it ahead of time. And then down here is where we have our due dates. So you can set up a date that the quiz is available. And I do recommend doing this for quizzes. You don't want students to get into the quiz too early, most likely. I've had a student that decided to go ahead and take a final exam on like the second week of class because it was open, and then was very upset that that was counting as her grade. So not that that's something that happens a lot, but it's probably a good idea to lock it until you're ready for the students to take it. And then the until date is going to be the last date that the students can access the quiz. The due date really is from this point on. After the due date, the quiz will be marked as late. So I could say that they have till, I'm going to give them a grace period of a day, but it's going to be marked late and maybe I'll take points off or something after. So one important thing is this comes up a lot. So right now you can see here assigned to everyone. And so that means that this is going to apply to everyone in the course, these due dates. But what happens if you have a student who needs an extension? Now, there's another way to do this, but I want to point this out because this works the same way with assignments too. So if I had one student who needed more time, who needed not more time on the test, but who needed, maybe they were sick and they need until the 29th to take it, I can click the add button, and I have to click the add button here to pull up another assigned to box, and now I can select the student or students who need an extension. If all you do up here is X out of everyone else and choose the student's name, it's going to unassign the quiz to everyone else, and their results and grades will be overwritten. Now we can get them back, but it always causes a lot of panic for the instructor when they look and realize they can't see any of the rest of the class's results. So you would want to make sure that you give these students their own assigned to box, and that way you can give them their own until date without messing anything else up for the rest of the class. So that is our settings. So we're gonna get into what building different question types, groups, and test banks and grading. But I want to pause there I'm just going to take a quick peek. I don't think there are any questions yet. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save on these settings. But now I'm going to come in, and you can see here now everyone has these due dates except these two students who have until October 28th. And you can see the other settings in the overview here, so you can easily see what your students, what the settings are. Note that it's not published yet. I'll wait to do that until later. So now I'm going to go in and set up my question. So I'm going to click Edit. And I have some questions in here set up already, just for sake of time. So when I click my Questions tab, you can click this Show Question Details button, and that will expand. If you don't have that checked, all it will show you is the questions. If you check the box that says Show Question Details, that's going to show you any questions and all the answer choices. So for each of these, if you are creating a brand new question, you're just going to come down to the bottom and you're going to click this New Question button. And then you'll be able to select from the drop-down menu what type of question you want to this to be, and then how many points you want it to be. So I'm going to actually kind of show you some of the more used types of questions here, and so you can see an example of what they will look like. So here in this box, since I've already created this question, if I want to edit it, I have to hover over the question, and then you'll see this little pencil where I can edit the question, or you'll see the little X that would delete that question. So I'm going to click the pencil. And this question is a multiple choice. That's the first item in the list here. And this particular question I have put an image into. So I do want to show you how to do that. You can put an image as part of any question. And so if I'm going to actually just delete this image so I can show you. I just put my cursor by it and click delete. This little button here, whenever you're in the rich content editor, this is how you can embed an image. So I'm going to click my little embed image button. And then you're going to want to click on this middle option that says Canvas. That's how you will be able to upload an image into your course to use in your test. So if you always make sure, by the way, that when you are putting an image into a quiz, that you select the course files folder, not the My Files folder. So the My Files, you only have 500 megs of storage space, and we don't have any power to increase that. For each course, you have 1.5 gigs of storage space. So you don't want to clutter up your My Files with images and things. You want to put it into the files for that particular course. So I already have this image in here that I'm going to use, this learning cycle image. But if you needed to upload a picture from your computer, you can always just click the upload file button, and that will pull up your computer and you can find whatever picture you need. So I'm just going to select this learning style image that I had in there before. And I am going to, by the way, alt text for if you have an image in there that you're going to need to describe, and this one is one that I would want to describe. So if I had a student that was visually impaired, I would want to type in there the words that are in the picture for the learning cycle. So I'm going to click update, and now my image is here. And now I can come down and put my answer choices in. So it automatically, for multiple choice, I believe gives you 4 boxes. If I need additional boxes, I can click this add another answer so that I can add additional answers into my multiple choice. I don't want to have extra ones, so if I really only want 3, I'm going to want to click the little garbage can to get rid of it. And if you need the rich content editor, let's say that you've got a chemical equation, a formula that you need to be able to type, that you're going to need that rich content editor, you can always click on there and click this little edit button, the little pencil again, and that gives you this whole tool set again for your answer choices as well. So you don't just have it for the questions, you can have it for the answer choices also. You'll note here that you'll need to click so that the arrow is pointing next to the answer or answers that are correct. In this case, it's multiple choice, so we can only have one correct answer. And so this is for the auto grading so that it knows how to grade the students' responses. And then here underneath, you'll see there's a little box that you can put feedback in. So let's say that I have a common misconception that students get incorrect a lot, and I want to give them feedback, provide them with a link or a video or something that's going to help explain that concept that they missed. I can always provide that automatically, so any student that picks this answer will get feedback on it. And then when I'm finished, I want to click update question. Now sometimes it does autosave, but just to make sure, I just always like to click update question so that I'm not stuck having to redo the question again. So that is multiple choice, although the image will work the same with any type of question. This next one, let me go ahead and click my edit button. So this is a fill in the blank. So this one is simple, roses are blank. I didn't get too creative on these. And down below is where you need to put the answers that you will accept. Keep in mind that it is case sensitive. It is spelling sensitive. So you may want to list any possible answers that you would accept for the fill in the blank questions, because if they spelled yellow wrong or capitalized red, they will not get the answer even though they have the concept. So I would probably be careful with those because they could cause some grief for you trying to grade if you're wanting to be more lenient. And now this next one here, this one's a little more complicated. So this is a fill in multiple blanks question. That's the third option here. So this particular question, you have to set up exactly this way. And again, I do go over all of these in the video in the Canvas Faculty Hub. I know we're kind of flying through these for the sake of time, but if you need a little bit more slower explanation, you can get that there. So roses are, you have to put your answers in brackets. So I didn't put my actual answer here, but you have to put a word and a number, and there can't be a space in between. So I put answer 1 here and answer 2 here. And what that does is you'll have a drop-down menu and you can select answer 1 or answer 2. Notice when I select answer 1, it shows I've put red with a capital and lowercase as my answers I would accept. For answer 2, it's blue and blue. You can do as many blanks as you need to, but you just need to make sure that you've got your brackets, and for whatever reason, it will not work if you put a space. So you have to have your word and then a numeral and have it in brackets. Keeps bringing me all the way down to the bottom. So this next one is set up similarly, and this one is multiple drop-down menus. So if I click edit here, I had to put my first option. So animal 1 is an example of a dog. An example of a cat is a animal 2. And then down here, I've got, these are my possible answers for animal 1. And these are my possible answers for animal 2, which happens to be a cat. So again, these are a little, I'm not sure if that it would be worth having to set that up. I probably would just rather do multiple choice, but I guess if you had multiple things that they have to pick in a question, you could do it that way. But it does seem like multiple choice probably would work better for most options. All right, so then this question here, oops, this one is a matching question. So you have to match the colors on the left with the item on the right. So basically you're going to be given 2 columns and you have to pair them up. So I've got blue and sky go together, green and grass go together, yellow and dandelion go together. And so your student is going to have drop-down menus. I'll show you what all these look like from the student view, by the way, when we're done. And then down here, you could put additional match possibilities. So if you want to put distractors in here, you can do that. But you do need to, Canvas will shuffle them up for you. So obviously the answer is not matching the term on the left, but you will need to have them matched up when you put them in so that Canvas knows what the answer is. So this next one, which of the following are flavors of Gatorade? I was looking for inspiration and I had a bottle of Gatorade on my desk, so that's where that came from. So you can, this would be for a question that has multiple answers that students need to answer. So any of these that have multiple ones, Canvas will give partial credit. So it'll, for example, if in the cat and dog one up there, if the student got the dog answer right and the cat answer wrong, they would get half credit for that question. So this would be an example of an essay question. And this is going to give your students a box that looks exactly like this, a rich content editor box. And that is where they will type their answer in. And that, of course, would be not auto-graded. This is going to be one that you would have to come in and add points for manually. And then this option here is a file upload question. And these don't get used a whole lot, but this is one option that some math instructors will use, is that they actually have their students scan their work, so to show their scratch work, or when they're working out the problems, either scan it or take a picture of it on their cell phone. And then you can actually select a file upload question from the list, and then that is what the students will have to do. They have to click upload and upload the image or the file or whatever it is. The bad thing about this is that it doesn't, for whatever reason, show up in the speed grader. You actually have to download the file onto your computer and grade it that way. So that's kind of a little bit of a pain, but this is an option, and it is something that some instructors will do if it's especially like math and that type of item where you have to work out a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and click save and publish on these. And then just as a quick preview, just so you can kind of see, everyone knows the multiple choice look like, but this is a blank. This is what the fill in the blank questions look like. This is the roses are red, violets are blue that were set up with the brackets. This is pug is an example of a dog, an example of a cat is a Persian. This is what matching looks like. So the students would need to select the correct term over on the right. Of course, multiple select. This is an example of an essay question, and then this is what your file upload question would look like. And so, by the way, as I said, anytime you click the preview button, you can preview your test, and you can submit it and it'll give you a score at the end. So you can also kind of make sure that your answer key is correct that way if you need to. So this is the portion where where I talked about the different types of questions. If you have any questions about that, because next we are going to move into groups, question groups, and then test banks. But if you have any questions at all about the types of questions or how to create the different types of questions, go ahead and type that in. It looks like so far, and I know a lot of this stuff that we have gone over has been gone over many times, so you might be waiting for the test banks, that type of thing that we haven't offered as much instruction on. So I apologize, but I didn't want to not go over these types of items in case anyone needed it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this, keep editing this quiz. So we're going to look now at question groups. So this test here does not have any question groups set up. Each of these questions is by itself. It is not in a group. If I wanted to add another question, I would click this Add New Question button, and I would just keep adding questions that way. Question groups, I'm going to click back on my quizzes tab here. So question groups are going to look a little different. So these questions are in a group. So you can see, and I'll show you how to create a group in a second, but you can see that this group is called Chapter 1.1, and I've set it up so that the group is going to pick 4 questions and assign 1 point per question. So the nice thing about groups is that you can use this as a way to randomize your questions, because these 4 questions in here are going to be randomly assorted for students, so they're not going to all be in the same order. I could also put however many questions I want, so I could put 10 questions in this group or 6 questions in this group, and it's still just going to pick 4. So that will make sure that your students aren't all getting the exact same questions. So that makes it nice too. So anytime you want to randomize your questions or provide more questions than or different questions to different students, you will need to create a group to put your questions in. So I am going to, and you can have multiple groups, you can have however many groups per test question that you would like, but it's just going to, you're going to have your own set of rules for each group. So for this group, I called Chapter 1.1, the other one, so I'll just do 1.2 for this one. And again, you're going to say how many questions you want to have selected and how many points each question is worth. Now in a group, you have to have all the questions worth the same. So if you have different questions that are worth different values, you'll want to put them in a different group, in a separate group. So when I'm done, I'm going to click Create Group. You always will get this little exclamation point warning when you first create a group that's saying this questions group is set to pick more questions than available. Well, duh, I don't have any questions in it yet. It's going to keep saying that until you've got at least 10 questions in this particular group, because that's how many it's supposed to pick. So now you'll see over here on the right-hand side, these are my little tools for this particular group. If I wanted to edit the group name or the questions or the points, I can click the little pencil. If I decide I wanted to delete the group, I can click the little garbage can symbol here. But what I need to do is add some questions to this group. So I'm going to click the plus sign. Make sure that you don't come down here and click Add New Question. That'll create a question, but it's not going to be in a group. And it's a pain in the rear to move questions into a group. So I can click this plus sign here, And just like I did with my other test where my questions were not in a group, it's going to look the same as far as the types of questions and what everything looks like. But now this question is within a group. So I would click update question. I can click the plus sign. I can keep adding questions until I have all the questions that I want. If you want to move a question, this is why it's a pain. So you can actually drag and drop and move questions from one to the next, but it gets a little complicated because of course you would need to make sure that your questions are worth the right value. And if you create a question outside of the group, oh, let's see, it works now. Okay, never mind, it's less of a pain. You used to have to click here and find where you wanted to move the question, but it looks like they have actually updated it, so you can just drag and drop it into a group. So that's good news. That is something brand new. That is something that is going to make your life easier if you forget and click add new question instead of clicking this plus sign within the group. So if you have any questions specifically about groups, go ahead and type those into the chat. I do see that there is a question. So it says, so the question group is basically a bank of questions and we choose the number of questions we want. So that is a way to look at it. We're going to go over test banks in a minute. But yeah, so basically the group is basically a pool of questions that you can put parameters, rules in there for how many of those questions you want each student to get. So yes, that is a good way to look at it. So if I have 4 questions in here and I just say pick 2, then every student will get 2 of those, but they're not going to all get the same ones. And they won't be in the same order. So that was a very good question. If there's any other questions about anything that we have gone over so far, go ahead and type that into the little chat space. And so what we are going to look at next is question banks. So I'm going to click back on my quizzes tab here. So to get to your question banks, or if you don't have any question banks yet, to create a question bank, you need to click on the kebab, the 3 dots, next to the Add Quiz button in the upper right-hand corner. And of course, anytime you're trying to do anything, you always want to look for the kebab that goes with the item. So I need to click on this Manage Question Banks option. And even if you don't have any, you still need to click on Manage Question Banks. If you've used quizzes in the past, you may actually have a question bank that you didn't know that you have called Unfiled Questions. Canvas automatically creates a question bank to hold questions that you delete. So if I clicked on here, I would just see a random assortment of any question, and I use this fake course to train all the time. So I've got a million fake questions in here that were deleted at some point, and they all show up in this Unfiled Questions question group. So the thing about question banks is that, get back to my question banks, so you can add questions from a question bank to a test or test group at any time, but you can't take questions from a question group and add them to a question bank, if that makes sense. And it seems, I don't know why that is the case. So the questions that I just created in my quiz, if I create them in the quiz first, I can't then say, well, now I want to put them in a question bank for chapter 1. They're in my quiz. The only way that I could put them in a question bank, and this is kind of like like workaround little glitch thing is if I deleted the quiz, they would all pop up in this unfiled questions question bank. So that's something that I wouldn't be surprised if that changes at some point in the future. So you may want to consider, especially if you use maybe a midterm or a final that's cumulative, that's got information or questions about multiple chapters, it might not be a bad idea to actually start by, instead of creating a quiz directly, creating a question bank for the chapter. And then that way you can pull from the question bank from as many different question banks as you need to for your quizzes. So, and by the way, I should have said this at the beginning. I use the term quizzes, exams, tests interchangeably here because they are all created using the quizzes tool. So just those words kind of all mean the same as far as the Canvas platform goes. So I'm going to go ahead and click this Add Question Bank button here. And so I can give my bank a name. I'm just going to call it Sample 2. And then, oh, where did my bank go? Let me do that again. There we go. You just hit enter after you type the name and it will pop up. So obviously there are no questions in this bank because I just created it. Again, if I needed to delete it, I can click the X. If I needed to edit it, I can click the little pencil. So I'm going to click on the question bank, and I am going to have some options here. So you can add questions directly from or directly to a question bank. So if I click on add a question, it looks exactly like what it looks like when you're creating questions in a course. So this is, or in a quiz. So this is going to allow me to, instead of creating my questions directly in the quiz, I'm instead putting them in a question bank so that I could use them in multiple quizzes later. That's basically the benefit of the question banks. Instead of them being the individual questions pretty much being stuck in one quiz, they're now stored in a question bank where I can pull those questions into any quiz that I want in my course in the future. And I'll show you how to do that. So if I'm creating this chapter 1 question bank or whatever I want to do, I would basically just keep clicking add question until I'm finished. You also can, let me click back on question banks here, let me choose one that actually has some questions in it. So this sample test bank, when I click on it, again, I can click to show the question details, and that will expand the questions out so I can see the question and the answer choices. And for each question, I can click this move or copy question to another bank. So if I wanted to move this to a different question bank, I can move it to one that already exists, or I can create a new question bank. I can also choose to either just move it, and if I uncheck this box here, it's going to just move the question to the other bank. But if I leave it checked, it will keep a copy in this bank as well. So you can move the questions from one bank to another or copy them over very easily. You also could click this move multiple questions, and that will allow you to select as many questions as you want to move to a different bank. And now if I click on my question banks, sample 2, I've got these 2 questions that I moved over into this question bank. So it's not a bad idea if you want to try just creating your questions in here first. But now I want to show you, now that you've got your question banks, how are you going to move the question banks into, or the questions into, an actual quiz? So I'm going to click back on my, we'll use example quiz 1 again. I'm going to click edit. I'm going to click on the questions. So there's two ways I can do this. If I'm not using answer or question groups, I can just click on this Find Questions button here. And as soon as I click Find Questions, it's going to pull up all of my question groups. So I'm going to go back to this sample bank here. And I can either click Select All, which will select all of the questions in that group, or I can click Clear All and I can just select individual questions. Now you'll notice these two questions are already on this quiz, so it's letting me know that this question is already on the quiz. So that's, I can pick a different question. We'll just pick a random question. And then when I come down, I have two choices. I can either add questions to a question group that already exists, or I can say no group. So in this case, I already have a question group, so I might want to go ahead and just add it to that group. Click Add Questions, and now it puts that question from the question bank into the question group. So that's if you want to select individual questions and you want to add those to either a test or a question group. So now if you have, let's say, and this a lot of times will happen if you are using maybe a test bank from a publisher, you could add an entire test bank to a test at one time. And the way that you would do that is, I'm actually going to click this Add New Question Group. And let's say this is 1.3. And again, I would want to put my settings in here. And then I would need to click this Link to a Question Bank. And this is going to allow me to choose my question bank. Let's do this one. And I could select the bank, click Select Bank. And then this is letting me know that the questions are going to be pulled from this question bank. It's not going to have them all listed here like all of these other question groups are. It basically is just letting me know that this is where it's going to come from. If I want to see those individual questions, I would actually have to go to Manage Question Banks and click on my question bank. So I do see that I have a question. And if there's any other questions about question banks, go ahead and type those into the chat. So this says, if a quiz is already created, can we make it a test bank? So unfortunately, no. So that's the limitation of this, is if it's already if I've got all this quiz here, I've created all these questions, there's no way to add these to a question bank, other than if I deleted them, then they're going to pop up in an unfiled question bank, but I don't know that you want to do that. But that's the limitation. So that's why if you are creating new quizzes, you may want to consider starting with the quiz banks and then adding questions directly to the question bank, and that way you can add them to whatever quiz you would like. So then I have another question. Can we have a question bank generally instead of one for each course? And then we can use it for next semester. So you can't have like a general question bank across multiple courses. However, you can copy over. If you copy a course, replicate a course, it will replicate your question banks for you. So you can still copy it over from one semester to the next. and then you'll still have that question bank for the next semester. So you can do that just as part of your replicating. It's just going to copy over the question banks just like it copies over the quizzes and assignments and everything else. So that's a very good question. So if there's any other questions about question banks, and again, I do go over this in a video. I think it's the kind of thing where if you can get in and play with it a little bit, it becomes a little bit less, a little bit clearer, let's put it that way. So the last thing that I want to look at is grading quizzes. And so now I'm going to actually go into a different fake course here. So when you're grading a quiz, and I'm going to click on this chapter 1 checkpoint quiz. So actually, before I do that, let me quickly show how to get to your moderations. So if you're wanting to give the students extra time, you're wanting to reopen a quiz for someone, give them an extra attempt, you're going to want to click on your quizzes tab and click on the name of the quiz. And then over here under related items, you'll see a few different things here. Once students have actually taken the quiz, you'll see quiz statistics. And that's basically just going to show you how many questions on average the students got right and wrong, how many students missed each individual question. And then we're going to first click on this moderate this quiz. And this is where if you have a student who has accommodations and needs extra time, this is where you can give that student extra time. So I always use this as an example, which is why all these students have extra time. But whichever one you want to use, you can click on the little pencil to the right of that student's name. And you got a few different options here. So this one is extra time on every attempt. So everyone already gets 90 minutes. Most of the time, if a student has an IEP, they're going to have time and a half. So they'll get an extra 45 minutes on a 90-minute test. And then extra attempts, let's say a student gets locked out of the quiz, something happens, their power goes out when they're halfway through. You're going to need to come in here. Let's say they only get one attempt. You're going to need to come in here and give them an additional attempt. So even if you extend the due date for them, they still aren't going to be able to take it until you give them another attempt, because as far as Canvas is concerned, they've used up their attempt already. And then down here, let's say that the student got locked out. I'm giving her an additional attempt, but the dates that I had set would have closed the quiz last night. I can come here and click this manually unlock the quiz for the next attempt box, and that will go ahead and unlock it so that I don't have to also go in and change the dates for this individual student. So this makes things easier. It's quicker to just come in here, check this box, click save, and I can tell because I have this little unlock symbol here, that the student has the quiz manually unlocked for the next attempt. So let me go ahead and click back on my quizzes tab, and I'm going to click back on the name of my quiz that I want to grade. And this time I'm going to click the speed grader button. So this is where I can see my students' responses. Now for anything that is auto-graded, those points are going to already be assigned, and I'll be able to see those points here. But anything that I have to grade myself is going to be over here. So any essay questions, a file upload question, anything that I have to manually grade, it's going to be listed here. The following questions need review. So I can just click on the question, and then I can give the student the number of points that they've earned. I can click update scores. And now you can see instead of a 7, which the student earned on the auto-graded portion, they now have an 11. So I would need to do that for each of the questions that I have to grade manually. From here, I can also add a comment. I can click submit. I can also, if I wanted to, I could put a file attachment, anything that I need to add. I can also quickly here, and these features are in SpeedGrader in all of the different areas of Canvas, but I can easily see who has turned in the quiz and who has not. And then finally, just to kind of show you what this will look like, if I click on the Gradebook, so for this student's quiz, because I have not given her a grade for all of those manually graded portions, instead of seeing a grade, I instead see this little symbol that looks like a piece of paper and a clock. What that is telling me is that I have to go in, and it's waiting for me to go in and grade it myself. So you're not going to see a score in the Gradebook until you go in and do those manually graded portions. If it's a quiz that's 100% auto-graded, it's all multiple choice, true and false, then those scores will show up here automatically. This is just if you've got something that you have to also manually grade. Okay. So I have, at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and open up to any other questions that you might have about anything to do with quizzes. And I do see that I have one question here, so let me pull this up. So if I want to give a student a quiz after the due date, locked it, do I have to go into the quiz and click edit and change the date? So that's where you would want to click on the name of the quiz and click that moderate this quiz button. And then if you unlock the quiz for the next attempt, so I'm clicking my pencil, if I click that manually unlock the quiz for the next attempt, that will make it so that I don't also have to go and change the date for that student. This is all I have to do in that case, and that will allow them to still take the test without me having to go in and change any dates. Okay, so if anyone has any other questions, let's see. I think I've answered all the questions so far, but if anybody has any additional questions that they would like to ask, you may go ahead and ask those at this time. If not, I do want to pull up our contact information. And if you're working on putting a question in, feel free to go ahead and do that. But so for additional support, here is the support hotline for Canvas. They are available 24/7, 365, although I know that their response times have been a little slow lately, but they are there, and they have apparently gotten a little better recently. If you need to contact us, this is the best way to make sure that you get quick response from one of us. So distancelearning@camdencc.edu. And those are our availability dates and times right now. So I'm not seeing any questions from anyone. So I do want to say thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. If there's any other questions that you have, I will hang out for a minute or two, or if you would rather just shoot us an email with a question, feel free to do that as well. And I hope everybody stays safe and have a wonderful evening.